Welcome to the future, you guys. We are live. Hello, beautiful people. I guess every day this week we're going live with a live stream, and today we have a superstar. We have Andrew Kramer in the house. You guys can't believe he's here. You guys are going to stick around for this. I think he has a bunch of fans, so we're going to be sharing this link. Share with everybody. Let's break some records. Last time we had Draplin on, we had 1,200. I believe we can top that. Let's do this, but let's roll the titles! All right, who are we talking about? I'm just gonna give you guys a really quick intro, but we're gonna get Andrew to do the classic open that he always does. So let's cut to my slide. Here we go. This is Andrew Kramer. He has a company called Video Copilot. You guys need to look that up right now if you're unfamiliar with him. And I wanna just run through really quickly what I know about Andrew Kramer. So first, I found out about him because he offered up these really cool After Effects color presets, just using built-in tools within the software itself, not any extra plugins. But what really brought me in was his wonderful, humorous, comedic, action-packed, over-the-top AE tutorials. I'm assuming most of you guys are tuning in because you've seen those before. Then he started to offer stock footage, which we bought, stock audio, which we bought twice, thanks Matthew. And then we also bought his software and his 3D libraries. Look at this dizzying array of things he's offered up on his site, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But a lot of you guys know him for his optical flares. Optical flares, one of my favorites. And to top it off, look at this, you guys. He's got a lot of subscribers. He's got 410,000 subscribers. We're going to talk about his strategies for growing his YouTube channel and kind of like the genius behind the machine. There's Andrew right there, and I noticed something, guys. Look at his photo right there. He has a patented kind of a blue steel look. Look at him holding that red camera. Look at that. And then look at this, him holding another red camera. Different pose, same look. He's got that mastered. But look at this here. This, I believe, is at NAB. And every time I go by the Adobe booth and Andrew's speaking, you can't even get close to him because it's packed. It is packed with people. And then he put this image out yesterday. Something's blowing up. We want to know more about this. Okay, enough of me talking. Andrew, can you give us the classic intro?
Okay, here we go. Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here, and welcome back to another very exciting Future Live podcast.
Woo! That was awesome! So there is a different voice there.
Slightly different.
That's your radio voice?
Yeah.
Okay.
I only am able to do it for 5 seconds at a time.
Okay, so we know that you had to brave traffic. Sorry, guys, for getting started a little bit late. We're going to give everybody an opportunity to share and send this link out. Matthew and Caleb are sitting in the house, as well as Erica. They're going to be monitoring your questions on Facebook and on YouTube. Hit us up, you guys. We want to know what you have to think. And let's get into this. This week has all been about superstars, so I'm going to start off with this thing. How does it feel to kind of become this personality, this celebrity?
Well, I don't know about that. I guess the way I always think about it is that there's entertainment-based celebrities, right? Or places where you go to just see people that you like and see what they're up to, see what they're talking about. And I always like to think that Video Copilot is more a place where we do things together, right? So we're creating something together. People are putting in as much work as I'm putting in, and people are creating their own work. So I've always thought more about just that kind of, like, I don't think that many people watch After Effects tutorials just to see me talking about stuff. Well, maybe they do, but that's a whole different story, I suppose. So it's cool for me because you immediately just can talk to people who are creating After Effects, and they're saying, hey, I was working on this project, and it's just like we just jump right into it. So it's kind of a cool thing that we share this kind of common, enthusiastic, project. Mm-hmm. And so it's, I don't necessarily feel like a celebrity, although it is cool to be able to have an audience to push me to create, more difficult things, more complex things. And so overall, like, it's a good relationship and a good thing for me as an artist.
I mentioned before about your tutorials and how a lot of people know you, and you've developed a really great on-air persona. I'm not sure how much of that is you and how much of that is constructed, but I just love that you're able to bring so much energy and enthusiasm, and you make watching tutorials, which is generally kind of a boring thing, you make it really fun for us to watch. Can you tell us a little bit about how that style developed?
Sure. Well, first, thanks. For me, I watched tutorials. There weren't that many. This was 2005. And I watched tutorials, and everybody was all very professional, and I wanted to be professional. I've never made a tutorial before. I figured, you have to kind of go at a really slow pace and be really, step by step. And it wasn't about till maybe the 5th or 6th tutorial that I just started relaxing a bit. Like, it was too much work to be this other person, and it was a lot easier for me just to be myself and relax a little bit. If something went wrong, if something made me laugh, or I thought of a funny thing to say, it just felt more like a personal one-on-one rather than trying to be professional. And that seemed to really resonate. And that was good, because then it was less work for me to try to, make it boring. And I guess it's funner for me when I can add some crazy thing into the tutorial, and then people have to sit and watch it.
Now, a few years back, I noticed you developed a new BFF. I was looking at Wired magazine, that I think it was, and that J.J. Abrams was the guest editor, and something that they had tried for a period of time. So I was looking in there, and he was mentioning you, and he gave you a great shout out to say, like, I wish these resources were available when I was an up-and-coming filmmaker. And lo and behold, you're working on all these projects with JJ and Bad Robot. Can you tell me a little bit about how that began and what that experience has been like?
Sure. So I was creating tutorials on Video Copilot, and out of the blue, I got an email from somebody claiming to be J.J. Abrams. And so obviously, I wasn't exactly sure. And I have told this story before, but it is a funny story where I had watched some of his movies and some of his commentary, some of his talks. And in one of his talks, he's talking about the film he directed, Mission Impossible 3, and he was talking about how, Tom Cruise is using this, or somebody's putting this like gun inside of Tom Cruise's nose with this like poison pill. And the solution they had was, instead of some other person, shoving something into Tom Cruise's nose, JJ came up with the idea to have Tom's hand just doing it, and they just filmed it over the shoulder. And I just remember thinking, like, what an ingenious solution. And as a sort of test to see if it was really J.J. Abrams, I said, hey, whose hand is, sticking the poison pill into Tom Cruise? And he responded back that it was Tom's hand, and it's me. And so it's just kind of a... You have to make sure the people you're talking to on the internet are really who they purport to be. And so that was a good test, I suppose. And that eventually led into some title sequences for some shows like Fringe, and then my first movie project, which was Star Trek 2009, doing the main on-end titles and the main title. So that was pretty much just the most insane. It went from, who is this, to this is, crazy.
And then you still continue working with JJ right now, right?
Yeah, so we work, I was working with them directly for, I'm not even sure, maybe 5-6 years. So we were doing all the different movie projects that he was directing, and some TV shows. So it led to a bunch of very cool projects, and obviously working with him was extremely fun. And to tell one story, people always like, how is he? And I never told this story before, but I just thought it was an interesting, to give him some perspective on why I'm such a big fan, and just, he's just a great guy. So when I had my first daughter, so I was working with him, and I was working for him for about 6 months, right, full time, and I said, hey, I have this doctor's appointment for my daughter. And so we went, they did this ultrasound, and there was like some weird anomaly, right? We needed to do like this special cardiogram, like the most intense thing you could imagine as like having a new kid. So I called JJ to say, hey, we got this thing I got to do. my daughter, I just kind of explained the story. And he just said, you know what? Don't worry about anything. Go take care of your family. We'll be here when you get back. Take as long as you need, do whatever you need. And that was just like the coolest feeling especially because I had just started working. And, I think that just really started our relationship good. And, I just really felt very dedicated to working with him.
That's really cool that he was able to do that. When you said you went to work for him, were you working as a full-time freelancer? Or did you close up shop, or are you talking about just doing work remotely?
So I was working full-time. So I was sort of doing both things, and it was pretty crazy. It's still crazy today. But essentially, I was working like 3 days a week, and then I was working, weekends and nights and the other days, and it was just pretty much just doing everything at once, and it was very difficult. But luckily, I was in the process of sort of transitioning my company into the hands of some other, people that could do some more of the day-to-day stuff. Like I remember still answering customer support emails and things like that. So to be able to figure out how to scale what I do, like how do I scale my business to not require so much of my day-to-day input, but have more sort of overall structure of how do we create cool content. And so I could be more of the creative driving force and do the things that made me excited and things that were fun and things I saw, or even things that I might learn, like a technique that I figured out and thought, wow, this is a really cool thing to share, to create. So it was always helpful to be working in the industry, right? Like working on shows, working on movies, the insane energy level that it takes and how it pushes you to that next level, and then to be able to repurpose that knowledge and to create like hands-on training of things that actually occurred, rather than just speculative types of things that are just easier to do for a tutorial. So it was kind of a crazy situation, but I think it worked out to push Video Copilot to that next level.
So on that note, I have some questions. Like, there's the Video Copilot I know has products and footage and things that you can buy, and also tutorials that you produce. And then there's the company that creates visual effects and for films. So that's kind of more on the service side. How many people do you have dedicated to working on either or both of these things?
So primarily on the movie side of things, I usually lead most of that stuff. And then it's hard. It always depends on the project. So we have some 3D modeling guys on our team. So sometimes there'll be a project where we need to model a street, or we need to model some prop. And so I can rope in one of the guys to create a 3D model, or a good friend of mine, Fabian, who is from Germany, and he's like a master 3D tracking guy, among other things. And so I don't usually have a full-time crew of people, but I can sort of call on to different people to help, solve a particular problem, or to maybe take a little bit of the work off of my shoulders. But depending on the project. So like if it was a bigger project, like the main title sequence, I might have 3 guys from Video Copilot helping out more full-time. But if it's a smaller project or like a one-off shot, I'll probably do maybe 80 or 90% of the work, and have some of that stuff sort of just distributed to whoever is the best person for that task.
So what about in terms of like handling customer service, or writing, producing, editing, filming? Like, who is that all kind of just built up as you need it, or is there a couple of people doing that with you?
Well, I definitely have an awesome team of guys. We have people who do camera stuff. We have our customer support, website management, stuff like that. So guys like Matt and Pat and Tino and Taylor and Bobby. So it's a weird question, because back then, 5 years ago or so, it was a little bit different. I was definitely doing way more. And so the sort of transitional phase of trying to get more talented people in to help alleviate, like we might set up a shoot or a blog show, and you can always make the lighting a little bit better, or find an interesting shot, or do this bit or whatever, and things can really add up. Like the amount of time it takes to create stuff is just keeps going. The more detailed you get about it. So we've been able to grow our team, and we're actually sort of in that transitional phase right now where even with these guys, we're just trying to do so much more ambitious things that we're just trying to grow it even more so we can keep up with it. Because I guess maybe in a way, like working on movies sets your expectation for the quality and what's possible, and then you try to create it yourself, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is way too much work for one person. And at the same time, I've kind of admittedly sort of struggled with how much stuff, you're sometimes precious about things, and how can you, like, what things do you offload, and I would say that the more I've grown to sort of trust the guys and the people that work for me to take on more tasks, the more that they have grown, and the more that it's just blown my mind. And I always feel like I should have involved them sooner, so that I could have got back to some more of the bigger picture things that we do.
Okay. You know what? I have a bunch more questions and things I want to talk to you about, but I think this is probably a good opportunity to hit up Facebook and YouTube and wherever else we got this going out. See what kind of questions they have. Matt and Caleb, is there anything that you guys are seeing that?
Yeah. There's some good questions here, but first, like probably the first half of the show, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, I learned After Effects from Andrew."
He's the king.
He is the king.
He is the king.
Everybody has attributed, including myself, have learned so much about After Effects from you. So thank you on behalf of the audience and myself. One person asked, "Where did you learn AE from?"
Where did I learn? I think Creative Cow was probably the place where I got more into the complex things, but mostly I think I learned from just playing around with it, and I was using Final Cut Pro and using motion and keyframes, and it just started feeling too limited. I knew there was cooler things that you could create, and I think I got like a Mac Addict magazine that had like a trial version of After Effects, and just it was like, I didn't know how, like, when you go from Premiere, right, where you have like the layers and you can have multiple clips on a single time, on a single layer, using After Effects where everything is on its own layer, it was so confusing. And I think as soon as I just got through that, once I understood that aspect of it, it was just, how do I create this? And even if you watch some of, the earlier tutorials, it's me figuring out how to do stuff, right? I see people say, hey, how do you create this? How do you create that? And I think, let me see if I can figure it out. And if I can't, then I just don't make a tutorial.
That's pretty good. There was one comment that came up in here, and I thought it was pretty funny. It's like, I learned so much from you. I feel like I've made it. So how do I repay you?
Ooh, good question.
So I have a P.O. box. You can just... No, what I would say is good for you, right? Like, I appreciate that. Like, people who spend the time to learn After Effects, right? Like, it's great to, have a place where you can learn that. But I'm always just encouraging of people who spend the time to learn it. Like, After Effects is not an easy thing to master, right? And so the amount of time that people put into the program to get good enough to get a job, it's not a trivial amount of time. So first of all, thank you for the comment. Thank you to everyone. We have a great business that is built on what I think is this sort of relationship of good quality content, and obviously we create software and things like that. And so as people become more professional, if we're doing our job, then we're creating cool plugins and software that will make your job even easier. So it's really just one of those, the first one's free kind of thing, and then.
I think I'll be a little more crass. I'll just say, go buy something
Yeah.
Buy something, support this man.
I really like this show. I like the format.
I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Well, you know what? There's some comments coming in, and it's like hashtag Intercept. So let's cut to my slide here. Explain this image. What are you doing with this thing? Is this Intercept?
So
Can you tell us something about this?
This is the sequel to Intercept. No. I can tell you about that, but I can also tell you guys about Intercept too. So.
Oh, okay.
This is a quicker story. So this is just a cool thing that I made based on some new model kit that we're working on. So it was a kit of sort of sci-fi elements that can be built into all kinds of sci-fi structures and vehicles and just any kind of cool prop in a sci-fi thing. And that was just me testing out some of the pieces before we put it all together. It's blowing up a space station. Maybe I watched Star Wars or something, and I just felt inspired to blow something up.
Like your lightsaber plug-in?
Lightsaber plugin, that's a fun one. That's a fun one. So actually, okay, so here's the Intercept story, right?
All right.
It's just a growing story, but it's maybe somebody will learn something from it. I certainly have not. So about a little over 2 years ago, I started working on this short film with my friend Ryan Conley at Film Riot. And I'll give just the whole story because, context.
Let's do it.
And I started filming it, and it was right before the post-production on Star Wars really ramped up. And the sequences that we were doing on the movie were really cool and really manageable. And then, look, I don't know what happened, but maybe we were doing too good of a job, because they gave us a whole new sequence that had about 25 more shots and a whole new design thing. And friend Chase Hansen, and we tackled it. But unfortunately, I had to put sort of the post-production editing on hold to finish these visual effects, right? And that was a good enough excuse at the time. But then things got worse. So January had a baby. And I said, okay, finally. Oh, and then I had one professional gig that took me through, April. So I said, okay, now we finish the movie, right? But now the expectations are impossible. So here's when things have gone too far. My wife said, hey, Andrew, where's Intercept? And I didn't want to lie to her, right? So I honestly really just tried to think about it. Like, what is going on? Like, I'm working on this film, and so I really had to think about it. And essentially what happens is you have these expectations, and you try to, put it together and make it as good as you can. And it's your own project, which is always a difficult thing to, wrangle with. But essentially, I realized, man, it's been a long time since I've sort of posted something. I need, I had that Saber plugin I want to get out, and this FX console. So, let me put this on hold, and let me get this plugin done. This is a cool plugin. People will like it, and maybe that'll buy me a little time to, really just focus. And so I work on the plugin, and then, of course, it takes way longer than expected to do, and then, and then again, you want it to be really good because, you want to really buy yourself a little more time. And so you finally get that done, but now, 2 months have gone by. So now you're like, okay, let's really focus. Now, the other bad thing that happens is when you come back to a project that you've been working on is you think of way better things to do. So you're like, you know what would be better here? A whole new sequencer. And so you can spend a lot of time making something a little bit better, and without that continuity of working on something, you're constantly sort of in this flux. So, fast forward, I come out with the FX console, and every time I feel like, okay, I'm in the groove, I get that like, there's people that want to see Intercept. There's people that want some of these cool tutorials and things that I've been teasing. And I don't mean to sort of tease them out. It's like, I think, okay, let me just get this done. And then you're like, oh my gosh, it's been 6 months. This tutorial's not good enough. Because people expect such a, such a good tutorial or whatever. And again, it's not, to me, like, I try to make things good, but what I don't want is to release a tutorial and then go back into, editing or whatever, and then disappear again. Like, this whole situation has just been about figuring out how to avoid this kind of this kind of loop where you're stuck in a situation where you just need to sit down and do it, but at the same time you're running your company, you're raising kids, you're trying to do as much normal stuff as you can because you don't want to finish something and then be behind on everything else. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like having all these projects that are converging at once, and it just makes everything that much more difficult. So, but I guess after I thought about that, I was thinking, okay, what do I tell my wife? So I just lied to her.
I thought you said you weren't going to lie to your wife.
Look, things change.
Yeah. So how long has it been since you started Intercept, and when do we anticipate a completion date?
Let's see. It's 2017, 18. No. I hate to say this, but it's close to being done. And this is the dumbest thing to say on a live thing, but it's legitimately like coming here today was definitely like a nice break because, just been, see, here's the thing. We're not that we're just working on it, right? We have 2 new plugins that are, the biggest plugins that we've ever done. And it's like whenever you do something that you think is good and you want to follow that up with something, the amount of work it takes to, reach that same level of ingenuity, that same level of surprise and excitement for a product, it takes way more time to get to that point. So I don't want to forget about how exciting some of those tools are and what we're doing, but at the same time, I have been finding really big chunks of time to head down, focus on more. It's basically visual effects, but we are kind of editing this, this action sequences that are done where you have a lot of visual effects change a bit as you're doing the visual effects, right? You might have a cut, but then you look at the visual effect and say, wait, it's way cooler just to stay on this shot. So, most of what's happening is CG. So that flexibility is a bit of a curse, but it also is something that what's 4 more years, That's what I say.
I have a follow-up question to that. Andrew, it seems like you're a very busy guy, obviously juggling a lot of amazing things. How do you prioritize what you're doing, and how do you keep momentum for those things?
Well, the way I keep momentum is being productive, right? And I know it doesn't seem that way usually sort of outwardly because a lot of what we do is not publicized as we're doing it. But I always feel like as long as I'm achieving certain goals every day, that I'm moving forward in the overall scheme of insanity that is my life. And as long as you're getting big things done and you're getting more people involved in things, you feel like you're making that progress. And that's actually why I have such a hard time going on vacation, right? Like it's like, oh, it'll be fun. You can relax, and like I'm like, all right, here we go. Day 1, I'm like, it's gone. So productivity is definitely where kind of I live. But what was the other part of your question?
I was like, how do you prioritize all the things that you're doing?
Yeah, it's tricky. I wouldn't take advice from me on this, but what I would say is you just don't want things to fall behind as they have, right? But how do you keep your software going to where you're adding the features, you're testing the features, and then you're also working on, say, visual effects. Now, the cool thing, at least in the eyes of sort of this project, is that the amount of innovative software solutions that we're creating because of the needs of the visual effects of this project are just, for me, it's that magic, right? It's like when you use software that was made by somebody who was trying to create something rather than software that is just abstract and maybe could be used for something and doesn't really have any, how do we put it, like it's software for designers. So things like, say, with Element 3D, we have cars driving on the road. Well, when you look at a road, and especially at night, the headlights create like a I can never remember this word, but like a stretched out reflection. It's not just a mirrored reflection, it's like a stretched out reflection. Check the chat, somebody's got the word on it. It's like anisotropic or something like that.
Anisotropic.
Yeah, it's one of those. This isn't live, is it?
A little bit.
Oh. But things like that, like different matte issues, like matte reflections, like some of the features that really take our software to the next level were based on solving technical problems. So I guess there's a bit of a solace in knowing that it's not just a fun personal project, although it is, of course. The insanity kind of makes it a little bit more exciting, I suppose. But you're really building features around that. So I try to prioritize the team, right? How do we make sure that everybody is busy and productive? And so we've been sort of growing the company recently with some new employees that can take on some of these more critical tasks of say like our stock footage collections. We have an awesome team of guys that I don't even think they have eyebrows anymore from all the fireballs that we've been filming. But we're not just creating stock footage either. We're creating stock assets specifically for compositing. So in the case of car effects, right? Like you want to have fire, but what good is a fire clip if it doesn't have the right sort of like wind? Like say you're driving a car and like the car's on fire, not giving away spoilers, but let's say the car is on fire, the fire is blowing in the wind as the car is driving. So we want to shoot assets and elements that are useful for compositing so that you don't have to do so much bending and warping and doing weird manipulations of organic, natural, effects. So that's another kind of benefit to developing tools based around real projects, and of course our tutorials.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm taking some notes here. Matthew, is there anything else? Well, I guess I'm kind of just thinking about this, Andrew. Like, you sound like you're working like almost all the time on a variety of different things. How are you managing your time? How do you achieve work-life balance, or is there such a thing for you?
Yeah, I can answer that question. I know how to not achieve work-life balance. I would say that it kind of comes and goes out of flux, right? Sometimes you're like, wow, this is great. You're balancing it out, and then sometimes you're thinking, wait a second, I'm sleeping on a cot in my office. What has life become? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I feel like this is not an ideal thing for everyone to sort of push themselves to an insane level. Like, I think maybe more importantly, here's what I project in the future for achieving it, right? Which is having more trust in people to manage some of the different things that take up a lot of my time, and giving them the tools and everything that they need to help push the creative efforts that I might have. Like, I want to do this or I want to do that, and that way I don't have to get so overrun with all of the responsibilities of what that takes. And it's a weird thing because I knew that this was an important thing, but it's like once everything just tumbles, once you get hit with a ton of bricks of all the things happening, it's very difficult to sort of dig yourself out. Is there any more metaphors that I can mix into that? I want it to be totally unclear what I'm saying. But you have to make priorities, and I've said this before, right? Like, being able to see my family, like, that's always the highlight. Like, that's when you know you're working like a lot, when like Crazy Kids is like, oh, come here, you Crazy Kids. So it's the craziest it's ever been right now, but it's building up into something that will hopefully allow me to avoid this in the future for at least 6 months.
Well, take me through an average day. I want to pin you down to something. I want something finite. What's an average day look like for you? When do you get up? How much work are you doing? When do you sleep, etc.?
Average day. Average day right now is probably I go to bed around 2 a.m., get up at about 8 or 9, and have some coffee, take a shower, and if I don't have a lot of time, then I'll just wash my hands. But you want this to be a truthful answer, okay?
I do.
So I don't take a shower. That was a lie. I'll get to work probably about 9:30 or 10, and during the week where we have our whole team there, I'll try to check on things, make sure that certain projects are going, get feedback to people about new changes or ideas or directions, and that's like software support, whatever. And then probably 11 o'clock is I'll start just figuring out what my day is going to be. Okay, I'm going to do these shots, these 6 shots. And if it's a visual effects, I'll be, maybe I'll work on like a look development, right? And then I'll start comping that into the plates, put that into the sequence, see how it looks. And right now it's been really cool because I've been in sort of like the finalizing of the visual effects. So there's always like ways, how do you get something to look good? You could sort of iterate, right? You work on it, and then you render it, and then you look at it, and then you work on it a little bit more, and that's always a really good way to do it. But it also leads to, especially when you're working on something for the first time, you come back to that, and then you work on some other shots, and you make those even better because now you're better at it. And then you look back at the old shots, and you're thinking, these ones, let me just rework these really quick. We got 2 more years. So right now has been awesome because it's been final mode. Like, so I'm working on shots. It's not, okay, this is looking pretty good. Everything is done to be final because we've got the look down, we've got the animation, so it's really just compositing. And so I'll work on visual effects literally till 2 in the morning, and I never have coffee after 9 p.m. That's my only tip I can offer to people. What was I going to say? There was something about working on the shots. Let me think here. Like knowing that you have to get them done and be finished with them, it actually is kind of a cool way to work on something, right? Because you're always so precious about the work that you do, and you might spin the wheels on something for a long time, and you realize that, hey, get it to that point where you feel like it's done, and then render it out. But don't be so precious about it, because you'll have time to do a revision and to rework it. And by not ever rendering something out or saying, okay, let's look at this, you get stuck in this phase of noodling and tinkering, and I've gotten way more finals out of just saying, okay, let's focus towards that goal, and I think the shots are really turning out great.
Now I noticed there was no mention of time for family or eating or doing anything else. Are you working literally from 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. to 2 a.m.?
So I will usually have dinner and about 2 hours hanging out with kids, my wife, and then same on the weekends. Usually I'll hang out with the kids. Trust me, it's not ideal, but I've kind of talked to my wife about it, saying, hey, listen, I'm digging myself out of this hole that I've created, and I can't lie to you anymore. No.
Okay. So I want to stay in here for a second because I have 2 kids myself, and you have 4 kids, right?
Yep.
And how does your wife respond to all this stuff? I mean, one could see the benefit of you building up this company, but I think she may or may not say, like, where's my husband? Where's the father to my children? While you're grinding away. This is the grind life, so how do you respond to that?
Well, I would say that, do you have one of those chairs that folds out and I can lay back and really get into this? No, I would say that it's been challenging, but all I can say is I have the most amazing, supportive, loving wife, and honestly, without her, I would not be able to do what I do. And obviously there's benefits, but it's not necessarily, that's not the only reason, right? Like you do this because you want to be able to have more time, and then at the same time you're killing yourself and losing the time that you have or that you once had. So it's it's been something probably since I started working at Bad Robot, where you're working on movies, and I guess this is something that I felt that you're working on a movie and you really have your whole heart and soul into it, and you feel like, oh my gosh, this is like, I have to get this done, and you blow things off here and there, and then when it's all over, you think, gosh, I wish I would have spent more time. I wish I could have had more time. And so I try to just always remember that do not make this a permanent sort of way that you live your life, because it's not really what I want. Like, balance is definitely more ideal, but you want to be able to spend time with your kids and your family and your wife, and you want them to have that time. And so you always want to just sort of reevaluate what you're doing and say, okay, don't allow yourself to get stuck into this sort of rut, and find a way out so that you can have all of those things and a fulfilling sort of, goal-oriented business, professional life.
Okay, before I kick it to Matthew and Caleb and possibly Erica, if they have a question, I do want to point out something. Now, I've been looking at your photos, looking for things to comp in for the thumbnail. I've noticed this progression. Your face has changed. Like, you're getting thinner, and I'm seeing you now. It's like, you got some guns going here, dude. What's going on with the body thing? How you finding time to work out and make more kids and do all this stuff? Because you've been busy.
There must be some correlation there.
I don't know what that is. I'm not going to touch that. Talk to me about, like, you look fit. Like, you look strong right now. What's going on?
Thank you. Well, part of sort of keeping energy, keeping your creative energy, I think, is your physical health. And, I've been around people who have, like, really had struggles with, their physical health. And I think you see that a lot in this industry of people who, work so hard and don't have time. Like, I remember I didn't have time to go to the dentist. Like, the dentist would be like, set an appointment, and you're like, that's not going to work. I can't go to the dentist. I can't go, find a time to go to the doctor. I remember my driver's license expired because I didn't have time to go to the DMV. These are all great excuses. But what I would say is physical health helps your mental health, helps your mental focus to work. And so I just kind of took it on as another, task. And it's not like, I promise I'm not like working out a ton, but I try to do maybe 3 or 4 times a week, just like lifting weights, try to eat well, but I'm not on some kind of diet or anything like that. It's worth it, right? It's not about, getting buff and, it's about getting buff, let's be honest. No, the thing I love doing is working. And when it gets later in the day, when you're standing up all day filming or whatever, like, I remember that. I remember we'd be filming, had like a shoulder mount camera, and your back is hurting, and you're just like, man, this is only one day, and we've only been filming for 10 minutes. So I thought, get your physical health in order. That is only going to lead to more creative and long-standing efforts on that front. So,
Was there an event that kind of kicked it into high gear for you? Because we talked a little bit before the show, and you said you've been working out maybe the last 3 or 4 years. Was there something that happened that was the catalyst for this?
So Venice, they had this Muscle Beach thing going on, and I was thinking, well,
you gonna do that?
No, I don't know if there was anything specific. I mean, I do remember one time, and this is one of those sort of first times working out, and this was probably like 10 years ago. And I remember my wife and I, we had planned a trip to like Hawaii or some vacation spot, and I thought, I'll start working out, and that didn't really work out. But I would say, 4 or 5 years ago, I don't know if it was anything specific. It was just, I felt like my energy wasn't, just wasn't there. And, I did cross country in high school, so I was kind of a bit of a runner. I could run for a few miles. And so I started running again. And then somehow I just thought, hey, I should do some weight training too, because you talk to people about getting older, right? And I don't know the terms for it, but like your muscles start to atrophy as you get older, right? So if you're not building muscle, then you're sort of losing muscle. And I don't know who said this, but somebody had a good quote that I just stuck with me, which was, you need to trick your body into, your body is dying and you want to trick your body so it doesn't find out by working out, exercising, or whatever. And so it was not anything specific. It was just like, wanting to not lose the way that I felt in that moment, so I could keep doing, what we do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm gonna.
And then I bought a bunch of tank tops. I was like, yeah,
Ready for Muscle Beach.
Some spandex. All right. So Matthew and Caleb, Erica, you guys have anything for him?
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to call out 2 super users in YouTube. First, Bonk. He just said he gave $20. He said, "Thank you, Future and Video Copilot, for helping me take care of my family." So that's
Nice.
awesome of him. And then another guy, Omid Pakbin. He also gave $20. He said, "You guys asked my question, and I think that was about how to pay you back." And he said, "I already bought all of his plugins already." Thank you for doing
Buy
the
them
interview.
again like us. Buy it twice. I got a little quick story to tell you guys. Quick story. Matthew's working on his giant Xbox One X launch thing. And he's working with John Robson. They're cutting this thing together, and they're so excited. I'm like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" He's like, "Check this out." He plays for me this clip, and they're like working in some of your sound library. And he's like, "Dude, we just bought this." I'm like, "Oh, you guys, I already own this. What are you doing?" I was totally like raining on their parade. They were so proud of this momentous achievement. Like, guys, we got really smart. We bought these things and we just cut it together. Aren't we so cool? So buy them again. Just buy them again. Buy them twice.
Keep putting money
Twice
in his
is
pocket.
good.
That's right.
I'm sure the sound effects get even better when you buy it twice.
I'm not going to interrupt this line of thought here.
So there's some questions that came up while you guys were talking, and I think it's going along the lines you gave a lot about your life and how you're just keeping momentum and doing all these things. Caesar asked, have you ever lost your way or lost your passion for something? Have you ever been in that part of your life where you feel like, I don't feel like working on this anymore, or I don't want to build this company anymore, just anything like that?
Good
I would say,
question.
that is a great question. I would say I've never lost my passion, but I do have moments where I'm looking at all of the work that has to get done, and I'm thinking, this is impossible. And, I put on that song, Mission Impossible, and I think, all right, how do we solve this? But it's usually that way because you get something done. Like, this is my personal sort of experience with it. I'll be working on something and I'll get a big sequence done, and it's like such a relief. You knew how challenging that was, and you get it done, and then you're over that mountain, and then you see the next mountain, and you're just like, what am I doing with my life? But then you come up with another plan. You say, okay, here's how we pull this off. And then once you have a plan for a problem or something you're doing, you have to believe in that. And so I've always been able to trust in what the goal is, even if things change, even if you get thrown a whole bunch of other problems or whatever, knowing that there's no benefit to sort of just throwing your hands up in the air, except the momentarily being cooled off. But that's not going to help get the project done. So once you come up with a plan, I find that is always the best way to stay motivated.
Great. Let's see. There was another question that came up, and I think I should have asked this earlier, but you put out a lot of tutorials over the years. Ashley Smithers asked, did you ever have any hesitation early on for releasing the knowledge that out there? Because I know there's some people in the industry that like to hoard
so good.
Their tips and tricks for like how they make something. Was there any hesitation on your part to put that out there?
Not at all. Not at all. I would just make the tutorial and make it slightly different, right? So I keep just the really good things, and then no. Not at all, because the information is what gets people to stay into that industry. Like, I think every time you ever wanted to get into something, you wanted to know what software did they use, right? What camera did they use? Like you always want to know exactly what the things are so that you could say, okay, I got the camera, I got the computer, now I know everything else is up to me, because if they use this, then I should be able to use it as well. And as far as not sharing complete information or whatever, I I don't think that was a way to sort of build up valuable information. Like, okay, here's another example. You've gone to websites and they try to lure you in with like some free thing or some cool thing, and you look at it and it's always some piece of junk or doesn't, it's like, what? An online calculator? This is
I need that. What are you talking about?
So I remember always wanting to have like genuinely useful stuff that was for free. So like Saber and FX Console, and like we gave away stuff that we thought was legitimately valuable. And some people say, hey, why don't you sell that? Well, if we get people excited into this industry, then then there's products and things to happen in the future. But it's the information that I was always hungry for. And we started in 2005, and there wasn't YouTube and there wasn't tons of video tutorials, so there wasn't a place to learn how to do this stuff. And frankly, I wasn't necessarily an expert at the time either. So my progression of learning, the point is, I didn't know enough to trick you guys.
I think we know nowadays that knowledge is very valuable, right? And putting out content is very valuable, especially for us. Back in 2005, did you have that intuition that I'm going to build a tribe around me? I'm going to put this information and this knowledge for free out there, free plugins, all of that stuff. Did you already have that master plan at inception?
Yeah, not at all. It was never about. It wasn't even really necessarily about starting a business. It was just, I was trying to be a visual effects artist and to do compositing and motion graphics, and so this was like a side thing to do. And you respond, like when you see how many people respond to the tutorial, it just motivates you to make another one and to figure out something even more challenging. I think that was something that we did pretty often, was how do we create something genuinely cool using the built-in plugins of After Effects? And that was always, even today, where I get the most enjoyment out of, we make plugins, but it's always fun to go in there and say, okay, here is what we have to work with, and what can we create? Where are the limitations? And it's exciting that at the end of all that, you can still kind of come up with some new technique in 2018 that is not quite like something you've done before. And I feel like with me, everything that you've learned over the years, and maybe you move and you use a different program for this or whatever, but you're learning a lot. And then you come back to those same plugins that you haven't used, like, oh, where's that advanced lightning plugin? Where's that circuit? You come back to these plugins that you haven't used in 5-10 years, and now all of a sudden you have whole new ideas on how to use that, because you have a bigger wealth of knowledge of other things that you can then put those into something. In fact, this is a story I have told before, but I like it, which is there was an After Effects artist who was in Japan, and he was using an English version of After Effects. And the interesting thing about it is that he didn't speak English, so the whole program was totally foreign to him. So he didn't see advanced lightning, he just saw some crazy, name. And the way that he learned the plugin was by basically touching all the sliders and seeing what it did. And that idea of being able to use software without any kind of preconception of what it's intended to be for, or what some artist or developer made this to be used as, instead look at it through the lens of what is possible. And that's how we try to develop our software, and that's sort of my strategy for when I get in there looking at plugins. I don't think about what it's for, I think about what it can do.
That's awesome. Before we move on, I just wanted to call out a few donations again. DeMarco says, thanks for having my After Effects idol. I learned AE because of him, and I have all of his plugins already. And then two other guys, man, people are loving this. Caesar says, thanks for answering my question, and I have already bought 90% of your plugins. So whatever the last one is, Caesar, just buy the last one.
Wait. What's his name? Matthew?
Caesar.
In Asia, in the Asian culture, 90% is an A-. Go for that A+. Get that 100%. Get the 100.
That's right. And then one more. Grant says, thank you, Future and Andrew, for teaching and inspiring so much. Also, Andrew's humor is always on point.
All right. So I want to talk some business. This show is about the business stuff. So you've built up an empire. You've got this incredible passive income business model. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that, Andrew. from a business point of view, how much does these products and stock footage contribute to your overall annual income, let's say?
Well, Video Copilot is very successful financially, and so put it this way: to work on movies and stuff like that, there's budgets and sort of limitations. So Video Copilot definitely allows me to sort of pursue what I actually love doing, which is creating stuff and doing visual effects. And so to answer your question, it's basically gives me a chance to make the stuff I want to make, create the software that I want to create, and not have to do it in a sort of, in a traditional sort of business format. Like, I guess another way to put it is that, companies have like cycles, and you release a product and you have this sort of time period, and there's this sort of the business way that you sort of do things. And for me, I get to benefit from being able to just create the things that I'm passionate about. Like if I want, to make this plugin that does this, I don't think in terms of, okay guys, it's been 18 months, let's get an update out there, let's have a release schedule. And so in a way, the success of the business allows me to run the business a little less traditionally, which I think people appreciate a bit more, maybe not so recently, but at least our strategy is to create stuff that is innovative and exciting to me. Because if it's not exciting to me, if it's just adding another slider here or giving another option here, I'm not excited about that. I'm excited about genuine pushes forward in technology, and in particular, I hate to say, we're working on this new thing and it's coming out soon, but the reality is that's what we're doing. Like, we're developing technology that I don't think that has ever been used in the ways that exist currently, and there's nothing more exciting to me. Like, I like to be able to unveil a new thing and it'd be cool, not just, hey, now you can change the background color.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, could you stop taking service work like compositing gigs or visual effects gigs and just live off Video Copilot?
For sure, and I think that would probably benefit the company as a whole, but I think it's more important to stay 1 foot in the real world, right? In the real visual effects industry, because the visual effects industry is an extremely innovative industry. The leaps forward in technology and the challenges of a movie project will push a company forward, so fast and so hard that I'd hate to lose that momentum that's pulling our company forward into creating more innovative stuff, and instead feel like I'm just going to create software based on, the knowledge of the visual effects industry that I have, since 2009 or something like that. There's way too many innovative forces that help the company by staying in both industries.
Now, have you thought about a potential exit scenario, like a big company like Adobe or somebody comes in and just wants to buy you out and say, okay, here's a ton of money, you can just go do the innovative work that you love to do, and we'll take care of everything else?
I don't ever want to sell the company. I think about that scene from Good Will Hunting where Ben Affleck goes into the room. He's like, I'd feel pretty good if I had $200 in my pocket right now. Good movie if you guys haven't seen that.
I think that was a non sequitur for me. I didn't even understand that one.
You haven't seen Good Will Hunting?
No, I've seen it, but I'm trying to relate it to your story.
All right, let's just take a quick moment to talk about this. So Matt Damon is this genius, and they give him this job interview with these really important people at this company, and instead of Matt Damon going, he gives his sort of dumb friend the invitation to go to it. So that he shows up at the meeting, and they're saying, you should come to our organization because we're really great, and join forces. And he says, I'd feel good if I had $200 in my pocket right now. And then all the guys behind the table are like, I got 50, and they're trying to look. Can we just start this over? Hey guys, Andrew Kramer here. But no, I honestly love Video Copilot way too much, and I think everything that we do has a progression that can move it forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like software technology, that is just endlessly fun and exciting for me, right? Am I, am I going to do tutorials when I'm 50 years old? Probably. They're going to be like, hey, welcome to another very calm and collected tutorial. This is getting out of hand. But I think that tutorials and information and learning is something that never stops. Like every industry is going to continuously push forward, and there's going to be new software to learn. There's going to be new challenges to be figured out. And I'd love to be able to build a bigger team of people to create more content and information, because at the end of the day, right, it's like Video Copilot is me making tutorials, plugins, and things like that. But at the end of the day, people are hungry for information, right? They want to know how to do stuff that's cool, that's time-saving, that's innovative, all of those things. And I think if I could find a way to use this format to build it out into more different artists that could share their insights and their creativity, and then I can focus on, say, software and making tutorials about, like, I don't want to just make a tutorial to make a tutorial. Like, I want to make a tutorial that's something cool and interesting. If it's not interesting to me, like, I don't expect other people to find it interesting. So if there's ways to bring more styles and more energy to the company in the future, I think that's a cool way forward. And that, there's no reason to, sell it or, jump out this window right here or something like that. So.
Now, Andrew, I don't know if you know this, but there's a drinking game. Every time you say future, somebody has to take a drink somewhere. So they're like S-face right now. But I love it. I love it.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so I just want to let people know, because we have another, I think, 15 minutes with Andrew here before we have to let him go and do some amazing magical things and finish Intercept or something like that. This is how you guys can get a hold of him. Here he is on Twitter at Video Copilot, I believe, and Andrew Kramer on Instagram. And also you guys can go to videocopilot.net for the people who are not familiar with him. Is there something else I'm missing in terms of like social media where people can reach out to you?
Yeah, I think those are perfect. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So Matt and Caleb, Erica, is there anything, you got the man in the booth here. What's the dying, is there a question you were dying to ask him?
I have some lightning round questions, but maybe we could just do that at the end that I think could be really short.
Right.
I don't know if these two guys have anything that they want to ask.
Yeah, do you think as far as software goes, the effects industry is moving away from After Effects? If there are any other programs that you plan on making tutorials or plugins for?
Good question.
Sure. I don't think that people are necessarily moving away from After Effects. I think the industry is getting bigger, right? And so you have more people doing a variety of different things, and I think the more high-end market of, say, like Houdini artist is growing also, simultaneously with the After Effects market. Now, I don't have the numbers necessarily, but I think of the people I know that use Houdini, I think they still use After Effects, or they use Nuke or Fusion or something like that. So it's becoming more about what the project is and what the needs of the project are. And I think After Effects still has a ton of capability that solves most of the kind of needs of a sort of production house or doing motion graphics or things. And then for people, like if you need Houdini, then you need Houdini, right? But if you don't, it's not necessarily an ideal way to do a simpler task. So I think the industry is definitely growing, and as an individual artist, it's probably a good idea to get familiar with other softwares and tools, because that way when a job comes along that requires that tool, you won't only be limited to one software. But I think that there may be reason to get into some of that stuff. Like, I guess as a fan of software, Houdini is just a really interesting software in the way that it works. But for, it's like you could sort of dilute yourself into getting into too many different softwares or trying to chase the new cool software or something like that. And I don't think that that is a responsible way to, run our company when we're trying to provide content and information for people who are sort of dedicating most of their time to After Effects.
Okay, I have a software technical question.
Sure. Have you tried rebooting?
So if we're like sitting in the room with the folks at Adobe, in the next iteration of After Effects, what could they do to overhaul the software, a feature set, something that would make your life just so much better?
I think if they had like a link to Video Copilot on the landing page.
That'll be right after the feature. Yeah. What kind of features or what kind of things are you looking for since you're an active user of After Effects?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people talk about a lot is whether or not there should be like a node-based system inside of After Effects. And I think there's a lot of good reasons to do it, and I think there's some good reasons not to do it. I personally think it could be interesting to create, well, here's just like as a simple, observation, that if you have an After Effects project, the entire project is based on a certain color depth, right? So if you set it to 32 bits per channel, the whole project is 32 bits per channel. I've always thought, and maybe I should tell somebody, here I'm telling them now, is that every comp should be able to have its own color bit depth. Because there are cases where you want to work just in 16-bit color. Sometimes it doesn't cause any kind of overflow issues with the colors, but then there's another project where, okay, I want this to be 32 bits. And people who have worked back and forth know that if you switch between them during a project, that the project can actually change. The look of the glows, the look of the overall design can actually change if you switch it back and forth. So if you could take After Effects, global parameters and build them into the comp, then you can have individual comps that exist in their own sort of architecture. Now, using that same concept is, imagine you could create a node-based workflow that has, limited tasks or limited effects. It doesn't have all the same functions and mechanisms of the layer-based, but it could exist separately, and then you could benefit that workflow and use it for the times and cases where it makes sense, but not necessarily have to rewrite the whole software. Because I think that's what happens sometimes with software is you start trying to add things in and it becomes a little, it doesn't look like it was designed that way. Mm-hmm. And if they took that strategy, I think it could work. And at the same time, that would even give you more options to focus on the efforts of whichever, like if it's not that successful, then it's like that brainstorm feature and they just took it out. And then, I think that's when the Mandela effect thing started, because people are like, didn't After Effects used to have this little brain button right here? And people are like, no, it didn't.
I didn't even know what you're talking about. This is like, it got
if
super
anybody
geeky.
on the chat knows what I'm talking about,
yeah,
please
okay.
don't leave me hanging.
Yeah, I remember it. I have a question. Who still inspires you, or has anybody new started inspiring you?
Yeah, man. I'll be on like Instagram and, seeing just some of the render a day stuff people doing, some of the tests that people do. That is always fun for me to see this sort of beginning framework of people's ideas and the creations. I like, what do I like? What inspires me? I love cinematography. Like, I've been watching movies more and more and just looking at the image and how they have composed it and lit it and created it. And there's just an amazing art to it, like a subtle art even, that is so impressive. And I try to take some of that and apply it to my own work, and then you realize how difficult it is to make something look well lit and well structured and well balanced. And I guess, looking at some of the, famous cinematographers and seeing that their work and how it can benefit us as digital artists is, there's so much to learn from, these masters at their own arts, and we can find ways to build them into our sort of our own repertoire.
Great. So here's what we want to do, because we're getting into the home stretch here, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
I think we want to play lightning round with you, where Matthew's going to ask you a series of questions, and we want you to keep your answers as short as possible so we can get through as many of them as possible. And then I'm going to do a show recap, and then we're going to be on our way. Matthew,
Sweet.
all you.
Okay, start off with some easy ones. Are you coming to NAB this year?
I am going to NAB. I'll be there on Monday and Tuesday at the Adobe booth at 2 p.m.
Wonderful. Is there any plans on updating your beginners tutorials to update it for current trends?
Yes.
Wonderful.
When's the next tutorial coming out?
Yes. No.
Good answer.
soon. Is that like, if I want to get through this section I'm working on before I shift gears, and then if I have momentum to finish visual effects, I'm just going to keep going on the visual effects. If I find a natural break, bam, I'm going to get some other stuff done. So just want to, whatever's going to be more efficient and more effective.
Great. Is modeling ever going to come to Element 3D?
In the next version of Element 3D, there are features that are related to the vertices of objects. One thing in particular, there is a slice plane feature that allows you to sort of cut a model in half. And so for a lot of like HUD UI kind of things, it's a really useful transition tool, and it's a useful way to create certain composites where you need to just break a complex geometry into two.
Cool. Do you plan on doing anything for like real-time engines or VR, AR, any of this emerging tech?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what, we don't want to just add features that are going to be, stuffed away in the future. So we are looking at ways to do a single pass VR render output in Element, since we already have an entire, real-time engine, and there's ways to do it. It's just some of the tricks are some of the things like screen space ambient occlusion. I'm answering these questions fast because the lightning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So we have it, but we just need to do a few more tweaks to make it to work right, and then we want to make sure that it's something that is going to be useful, not just a throwaway feature.
Great. I will ask this, but hopefully it's a short answer. Where did the name Video Copilot come from?
It was the idea of like, how do we help somebody who wants to make a video? And it was like video pilot, but then it was like, no, because then that makes us the pilot. We want to be the co-pilot that support the artist. That is the best story ever.
Great.
That makes a lot of sense. What is the least successful product you've developed on Video Copilot?
Oh gosh, we had a product. We had a product called Real Clouds. Now, it was just like background clouds, like time-lapse clouds. Now, one of the selling features was that it was standard definition, and it wasn't that useful because you need more resolution when you have, background cloud elements, and that just didn't,
Are you pulling my leg?
No, somebody looked that up on the
Is it for real?
Wayback Machine. Yeah.
I've been fooled on this show before, so now I'm a little skeptical.
Oh, okay. No, I don't blame you. Yeah, no, it's Real Clouds. It was fun though, because I would wake up every morning and I would take my camera and I would go drive off the side of the road and shoot a sunset, or I'd go outside and be like, oh, cumulus clouds, it's time, and I would so.
Somebody used it. Video editor bloke said, I used those clouds before. Once.
He's the guy.
He's the guy.
Are there any just complete failures of things that just never got off the ground?
We're working on this short film called Intercept.
Love it.
I would say that we've developed things that we just weren't as excited about as we got into them. So it's not that they were a failure. It was just that, you release something like Element 3D and optical flares or whatever, and then you have this plugin that doesn't, it just doesn't kind of fit in line with those. So we've developed tech that we've just held on to or used for different purposes, but it was never about, trying out something and saying this was a total failure and, we should shut down the company.
All right, Matthew, are we ready to do the recap and say goodbye, or you have another question or two?
No, I think I have one more.
Okay, fire your last
Just
question.
a quick one. So after you finish Intercept, what's next for Video Copilot and Andrew Kramer?
Well, next step after Intercept is to never stop ever again, right? This whole getting everything loaded up, right? We're developing content, we're developing new plugins, getting this bigger project done so that we can never fall into this kind of a situation again. So we've been adding people to our team. We've been, just reassessing how much work it takes to get something done at a level that we are proud of. And to understand that and to actually put the mechanisms in place to make that a very good system, that's my goal for 2018, is to release it, launch our new website. And so there's a whole bunch of things that I haven't even announced yet, but get all of these things out and never stop.
All right, you know what? I lied. I have another question for you. I'm a young person. I want to be the next Andrew Kramer. Can you give me 3 tips on how to develop amazing tutorials?
Yeah, I think create something that solves a good technical problem that people want to figure out, and do it in a precise way. Be yourself, and just make sure you do a lot of like testing of your process. Like we do that with our tutorials. Like it's not about just me going in there and screwing around, even though it may seem like that from time to time. I really do spend a lot of time carving out the tutorial and what are the essential steps to creating that. Because it's always okay to have mistakes in your tutorials, but sometimes when you're learning, it can be hard to follow somebody very closely and then all of a sudden, oh wait, let me go back. Because as someone who's learning, it's hard to know, where did let me undo this and go back to where you were. So just have a very efficient, bulletproof plan for how you're going to do it, and that way the people can learn from it effectively.
Excellent advice. Okay, you guys, in case you are for whatever reason tuning in right now, I'm going to do the show recap, so make sure you watch the whole thing. 1, build tools to solve problems in the real world. You just said that. 2, delegate and trust the people you hire if you want to have a life. Showering is overrated. Just wash your hands when you're in a rush. I don't have time for gingivitis. Dentists are for slackers. Here's a note from Andrew. Your body is dying. Work out to trick it. And if J.J. Abrams is calling, make sure it's really him by testing him with MI3 trivia. And last but not least, behind every successful man is an even more amazing woman. I hope to score some points with your wife and mine as well. And I just want to thank you for coming on the show, Andrew. Lots of love. I know personally you've touched my life. I've gone over to the team and said, you guys, you're doing that the dumb way. Watch this video tutorial and do it the right way. All right? So big round of applause. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Yeah?
Thanks, Chris. It was a pleasure.
Okay, you guys, we're going to rock out of here. I'm going to do this song and we're going to get out of here.